Hello students and welcome. Today we're diving straight into one of the most entertaining and witty chapters in your CBSE Class 10 English syllabus, Mrs. Packletide's Tiger by Saki. If you thought high society life in colonial India was all about elegance and bravery, well, Saki is here to show us the hilarious, incredibly vain reality hiding just beneath the surface. Let's explore this absolute masterpiece of a chapter together.
Now, to really get this story, you have to understand the mindset of those earlier times. During the colonial era, hunting was traditionally seen as a sign of ultimate bravery, a grand personal achievement. People actually went into the jungles, armed with heavy rifles and large entourages, simply to prove their courage and, hang a trophy on their drawing room wall. There was absolutely zero concern for wildlife conservation. But Saki takes this grand, heroic idea and turns it completely upside down. He uses biting humor to criticize a society where wildlife was just a prop for the rich, and where people were driven by pure jealousy rather than any real courage.
But hey, before we continue our deep dive into the lesson, students, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, The ACE Archive, for more easy explanations of CBSE chapters, exam tips, and all the revision content you will need to ace your board exams.
All right, here is our game plan for today's explainer. 1. Introduction to the satire. 2. Jealousy in the plan. 3. The hunt and twist. 4. Blackmail and fake glory. And finally, 5. Themes for your exams.
Section 1. Introduction to the satire.
Let us begin by understanding the primary literary tools Saki uses throughout this entire chapter. He doesn't lecture us like a strict teacher, right? Instead, he uses a brilliant technique called satire. Satire is basically highlighting negative aspects in society or in human beings by making fun of them. In this chapter, Saki hilariously exposes the hypocrisy, the absolute shallowness, and the total environmental ignorance of colonial high society. These characters care only about how they appear to others, not about genuine achievement. So it's not just a funny story. It's a mirror held up to human foolishness, inviting us to just laugh at their ridiculous vanity.
Section 2. Jealousy and the plan. Because students, let's be real, every grand action usually has a very simple and often very petty motivation behind it. And what truly motivated Mrs. Packletide? Well, spoiler alert, it was certainly not bravery. Her rival, Luna Bimberton, had recently been carried 11 miles in an airplane by an Algerian aviator. And Luna talked of nothing else. She was the absolute center of attention in their social circle. Now, Mrs. Packletide simply could not stand this. Her entire decision to hunt a tiger was a pure, ego-driven, jealous need to get revenge. She wanted the fame, she wanted a tiger skin rug to show off at a luncheon, and she wanted a heavy harvest of press photographs just to completely steal Luna's thunder.
So what does she do? She doesn't go trekking into the dangerous wild, no way. She creates the ultimate safe tiger plan. Do note these steps down for your exam students. Step 1. She offers a massive sum of 1,000 rupees to the local villagers to arrange the hunt without any risk. Step 2. The villagers conveniently find an old, weak tiger that has completely given up hunting wild game. And Step 3. They use cheap goats as bait to make sure he doesn't wander off. The entire situation is artificial. It's completely staged for her convenience. The irony here is huge, isn't it? It's a grand hunt without even a single ounce of real danger.
And this leads us to a highly comical situation. The so-called fierce beast is described beautifully by Saki as the venerable herd robber driven by the infirmities of age. The greatest irony here, students, is that the villagers' biggest worry wasn't that this tiger would attack them. Not at all. Their biggest fear was that this incredibly old, weak tiger might simply die of old age before the Mem Sahib could even shoot it. Mothers returning from the fields even hushed their singing babies. They would literally quieten their infants so they wouldn't disturb the restful sleep of this tired old tiger. They desperately wanted that 1,000 rupees, and they needed the tiger alive just long enough to be shot.
Section 3. The hunt and twist. The big night finally arrives, but Saki has a brilliant comedic twist waiting for us. We have Mrs. Packletide and her paid companion, Miss Louisa Mebben, perched safely on a platform constructed in a comfortable tree. They are literally playing cards while they wait. Now pay close attention to Miss Mebben. She is incredibly stingy and money-minded. She has what the author calls a protective elder sister attitude towards money. While waiting in the dark for a supposedly deadly predator, her only concern is that Mrs. Packletide is paying way too much for an old tiger and that they absolutely shouldn't pay for the bait goat if the tiger doesn't touch it. Then the crucial moment arrives. The tiger ambles into view. Mrs. Packletide fires her rifle. But, as Saki writes, evidently the wrong animal had been hit.
Yes, Mrs. Packletide, with all her grand preparations and her expensive rifle, actually shot the poor bait goat dead. And the tiger? Well, the loud, sudden bang of the rifle gave the senile old beast a fatal heart attack. This is the central, absolute irony of the plot. She got her dead tiger, she achieved her ultimate goal, but she didn't even shoot it.
Section 4. Blackmail and Fake Glory.
After this hilariously anticlimactic hunt, let us observe how the power dynamics shift completely. The villagers happily took their 1,000 rupees and kept their mouths shut. Mrs. Packletide gets her media attention, the illustrated press photographs, and Luna Bimberton is absolutely seething with jealousy. Fake glory is achieved. But Miss Mebben is a shrewd observer. When Mrs. Packletide insists no one would ever believe she shot the goat instead of the tiger, Miss Mebben casually drops this genius line: Luna Bimberton would. In just those few words, she completely shifts the power. She uses this indirectly to threaten Mrs. Packletide, promising to expose the humiliating truth to her greatest rival.
So, what is the price of her silence? Miss Mebben casually mentions a lovely weekend cottage near Darking that she would rather like to buy. The price? Exactly £680. She extorts this precise amount from Mrs. Packletide, proving once and for all her deeply materialistic and manipulative nature. There is no hesitation, no guilt. It is greed at its absolute finest, perfectly calculated to drain Mrs. Packletide's bank account in exchange for preserving her precious social standing.
The physical result of that blackmail is Louisa Mebben's pretty weekend cottage. Saki gives us one last brilliant laugh here. She christens the cottage Les Fauves, which is French for the wild animals, and she decorates the garden borders entirely with tiger lilies. The sheer irony of funding a house called the Wild Animals with the hush money from a completely fake, unwild tiger hunt is just spectacular. It perfectly cements Miss Mebben's victory and Mrs. Packletide's hidden humiliation.
Section 5. Themes for your exams. This is where we summarize the most important academic points you need to revise for your board exam answers. First, let us look at the literary devices. A key concept you must know is the oxymoron. This is a figure of speech combining contradictory terms. Saki uses these perfectly in the text to highlight the huge contradictions between how characters act and how they truly feel inside. For example, Miss Mebben's disagreeably pleasant laugh, the glad news of a dead animal, or Luna Bimberton's repressed emotions when she is forced to write a polite thank you letter for the tiger claw brooch. These phrases brilliantly capture the fake politeness of high society.
Now students, please do note down these 4 core themes. First, the story clearly shows that jealousy leads to foolish and very expensive actions. Second, it exposes the utter emptiness of fake pride and vanity. Third, we see how greed corrupts people and relationships, culminating in outright blackmail. And fourth, ultimately, it is a masterful satire that exposes society's hypocrisy. Remember Mrs. Packletide's final realization? When asked why she stopped big game shooting, she simply replies, "The incidental expenses are so heavy." She wasn't talking about the bullets or the travel. She was talking about the heavy, painful cost of buying a blackmailer's cottage just to maintain her fake glory.
And that brings us to the end of our chapter analysis. I want to leave you with this reflective question to ponder, especially when writing your character sketches. Was Mrs. Packletide really successful in her mission, or did she completely lose her dignity along the way? Think deeply about that as you revise your notes. Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer session today, students. Keep studying hard, and I will see you in the next one.